it's nice to see so many people. My name is Ewniki, and I welcome all of you, the panelists, but also the audience, to this event today. You know, the title is Resistance and Social Movements in Times of War. And we will have like a 90, maybe 100 minutes discussion here on the panel. We will see where it takes us, and we don't want to be like, cut it short only because of time. So we will see, we will go with the flow a little bit. And but of course we will also have like a 30-minute Q&A section where the audience is having the opportunity to also ask questions. And and also I just want to say we have a title, yeah, Resistance and Social Movements in Times of Wars. But we just said among the panel also, there's so much to say, yeah, there's so much to talk about. So we don't want to be like very tight around a title and like fixed by a title and limited by a title that we gave to the event. So please bear with us, bear with the panel when we, you know, go with the flow and take turns and see where the discussion also leads us. Yeah, we want to have a flow in the discussion and not be like very strict among ourselves. So let me introduce this great panel. Next to me, it's Dilara Lorin. She's a Kurdish activist. Yes, a big round of applause. She's a Kurdish activist, she's a communist. And she's specializing in Middle East and women's movements. And she's also part of Arbeiterinnenmacht. Maybe some of you know the collective. So then we have Nora Rajab, who is a German Palestinian activist and also a scholar on migration. And she's part of a Palestinian feminist collective and will speak about this aspect, yeah, of her activism. Then we have, next to Nora, we welcome Ido Arad, who is a political activist and also a conductor and an author. So, which I found out just today. So welcome, Ido. And last but not least, we have Mohammad Abu Hajar, who is a Syrian Palestinian activist and political researcher in political economy, and also a rapper. If you didn't know, you have to check out his music, which is really political and very good. So welcome all of you. It's great to have you all here. And so we want to talk about building solidarity. This is a very important part of the discussion today. So maybe, yeah, building solidarity in a very complex reality, yeah, in a complex reality where many systems of oppression are intersecting, and we all have like our position in these intersecting systems of oppression somewhere. Sometimes we benefit, sometimes we are disadvantaged, but so we have to maybe look at these systems of oppression and how they shape our reality and how we can all work together in solidarity to attack these systems, to overcome these systems, to really dismantle all of the systems, not just one, but all of them. And then maybe not one at a time, but all of them at the same time. So how do we do that? So this will be maybe like a trajectory of our discussion today. And but first of all, let us speak in the panel and let us hear a little bit about yourselves and about your activism, what you do, and so we can take it from there. And I want to start with Abu Hajar. Can you talk about Syria in the current moment? And what is the relevance also maybe of this current moment for the Palestinian struggle?
Well, let me at this point contribute that I'm also part or a member, a comrade in the Syrian Revolutionary Left Current, a Syrian Marxist party. And to us, we see that what is happening right now, or what has happened on the 8th of December, was the fall of Assad regime. but it's not the victory of the revolution, which most of the times it gets equated as the end of the regime. Assad regime means per default the victory of the revolution. We see that it was the victory of the counter-revolution. We can see that now, especially when we look at it from Marxist lens, that the same economic elite, the same ruling class that controlled the Syrian economy under Assad is benefiting and is still empowered under the new regime. So what we see, that's why we call it the victory of the counter-revolution, talking about the oppression that the Sumud convoys suffered in Egypt and Libya. It refers to exactly that process that we saw following the Arab revolutions in 2011, that in Libya or in Egypt, the ruling classes have managed to co-opt the system again, to co-opt the revolutionary process once again in Egypt, Libya, and now in Syria, to reproduce the same system of oppression. And that will take us necessarily to the words of George Habash, that the process, the struggle to liberate Palestine is a struggle against the repressive regimes in the Arab world. It is not because especially with the 7th, following the 7th of October, we see that Palestine has gotten a momentum. So many people know about Palestine, so many people call it spiritual awakening. I don't know to which level we can agree that it's spiritual. It's certainly an ideological awakening, or it's supposed to be. But with that, we see that there is a tendency to look at solidarity as a market, as either this or that, to put causes against each other, or to try to build connection between the struggles. To my understanding, there is no need to build connections between different causes. There is a need to uncover these connections, to find them, because they do exist. You don't need to build them. You just need to search for them, to find them. Dialectically, you will find these connections. So we need to start believing and practicing that these are not stories. We need to find their connections, but we need to find it, not to build it. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will move on, Ido. I have a question for you. You are an Israeli, and you can maybe talk to us a little bit about the opposition within Israel and its role in overcoming apartheid and occupation and genocide, and maybe around these issues also what else comes to your mind when you think of the reality within that society right now.
Okay, thanks for having me, first of all. I think it's a little bit tricky to speak about opposition inside Israel and trying to achieve something optimistic at the end of what I'm going to say. But maybe I start like that. I think you could kind of divide the opposition in Israel to 3 groups. 2 of them are real. The third one, we really have to ask ourselves, is it really an opposition? After the 7th of October, you had since the 7th of October, you have 3 groups who are actually could in some way form an opposition. The first one could have been, or are in a sense still, the Israeli Palestinians. The Israeli Palestinians, which are 2 million people, that's 20% of the population in Israel. Sorry? Yeah, I'm now speaking as Israeli, so they are considered, and they have a Palestinian passport. For me, they're Israeli Palestinians. It's also very important for me to say that, because they actually formally should be having all their rights, having an Israeli passport in the Jewish democracy, which they don't. So by stressing that, I really want to make a point out of it. I'm speaking as an Israeli citizen, and as a privileged Israeli citizen for being Jewish. That's like something you just get, a privilege you get born with. So after the 7th of October, the Israeli state was very aware, like always, that struggle coming out of this group, some kind of this group going to the street, demonstrating, taking some other possible actions to support their Palestinians brothers and sisters in Gaza and the West Bank, is historically a very dangerous development in the eyes of the Israeli Zionist regime. During times of when we had wars, when we had operations in Gaza, 2009, 2014, one of the first things the politic has to be sure that the Israeli Palestinians won't stand up and start fighting inside Israel. So the oppression from the government and the police towards that group in the days after 7th of October was extreme. Like they jumped on everything which came out in the social medias. Everybody who wanted to say something. Students lost their places in universities. People got arrested, and we unfortunately have to see that also Palestinians with Israeli nationality are in a very precarious situation. They have a lot to lose, and they look at what is happening in Gaza, and they look at what is happening in the Palestinian territories since always, and know that this could also happen to them. And I think some of them also speak now in these terms clearly than ever. So this group, unfortunately, didn't really have a viable chance to become a real opposition. And you can see it also in the parliament. The Palestinian parliament, parliamentarians in the Knesset, they are in a very strange situation. If they speak to speak for Gaza and being Palestinian right now inside the state of Israel is like almost unimaginable. The second group I would like to mention is an extremely small group. I would estimate it in a few thousand people maybe. Those are, let's say, what is left from the Israeli left. Some Marxist orientation. Maybe you heard about standing together or doing some actions, but we really speak about a very, very small group. There were some brave people went out on the street in Jerusalem at the beginning, got beaten by the police. But with time, something got established. I visited the demonstration myself in Tel Aviv last November. 800 people were there. I don't think this group is much bigger than that. At least not people who have courage enough to go on the street. And then the third group, which I think is the one who's being mostly presented here in the German media, when the German media decides to speak about resistance happening in Israel, is probably the most interesting one. Historically, maybe one could call them the Israeli liberal Zionists, which is actually, if you look at numbers, it's not a small group at all. And those are the people which have been 1 year already, more than 1 year before 7th of October, and the Israeli operation in Gaza. These really hundreds of thousands, and at the end maybe even millions of them, went on the street to demonstrate against Netanyahu government for what was called, I think, the judicial reform in English. This group is historically has, as well as the financial capital in its hand, it has the cultural capital in its hand, and every other capital you can think about. Actually, since the country was founded, but they only had this hegemony, a representation of this hegemony in the government until 1977. This was like the party of Ben Gurion. That's the Israeli liberal. They even called themselves left. In a sense, you also had historically times where they were going on the streets to demonstrate for Oslo Agreement, for example. So it used to be kind of a real movement to try and achieve some agreement with Palestinians. Since 1977, the conservative right in Israel, which is the Likud party, that's the Netanyahu party still, is actually ruling Israel, except from a few years here, few years there, but Netanyahu, Sharon, and then Netanyahu again have been ruling now for almost, and from Begin as well, it's almost 50 years of right conservative government, but the hegemony in the society, meaning financial and political, judicial, and also in the army, was always in the hand of this liberal Zionist group. And Netanyahu actually was always getting his vote from the more conservative, less well represented in the society, lower classes, so to say. Either it's Jewish Orthodox, Mizrahi people, Jewish came from Arab countries. And to be honest, there was a very strange situation because Netanyahu neoliberal agenda was fitting very well with what the Israeli Zionist liberal left actually was pushing for at the time of Oslo. So this Zionist liberal left, which is now also going, you hear that they demonstrate more and more against what they call war. They still call the Israeli operation in Gaza war until today, you know? But they are on the streets, and they are demonstrating. But they are demonstrating against Netanyahu, and they are demonstrating against the fear of losing this hegemony that they've been holding for many, many years now. Because Netanyahu, thanks to some political pressure, decided one day he woke up and said, okay, now I'm going to do something very special. I'm going to rule with the ideas of the people who really voted for me, the lower classes in Israel, and not of the class who has the money, not of this liberal left. So this fight between the liberal left and Netanyahu is there, but traditionally, every time Israel is in a war or some danger from outside, like what happened in the 7th of October, they magically always find themselves together, agreeing on one thing, that the Jewish people are in danger, Israel is in danger, we have an enemy, we can fight now. And those liberal Zionists who really went to the street in 2022 and 2023 in thousands and thousands to demonstrate against Netanyahu, on the day of 7th of October, they all stood in line and said, no matter what, we have now a much bigger problem, Hamas, Gaza, and we are going and fighting this war. And they went and did what they did in Gaza on behalf of Netanyahu government. Some of them also entered the government in the beginning, and they didn't go and demonstrate against the genocide and the complete destruction of Gaza for 16 months, hardly at all. Then you had a ceasefire, and when they went demonstrating, actually, I want to correct myself, they did went to demonstrate, but what they were interested about was actually the hostages and what this so-called war is doing to the Israeli society. So, in other words, what I'm trying to get to, I have a big problem calling political movement like that, who has any sense of solidarity with the victim in this situation, which is the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, but the concentration is of course on Gaza because of the hostages in Israeli eyes. If they go now and say stop this war, they don't do it because people are dying in Gaza. They do it because they say, first of all, we have the hostages there. Second of all, this war is just not really viable anymore or positive for the Israeli society. They just came back to fighting Netanyahu and say he's just doing this war as a political, out of political interest. But none of them, I mean, there are a few of them, but in those demonstrations, which are the biggest ones, and being presented here, you have many, I'm sorry I'm speaking about, it's important because this is such a misunderstanding in Germany. You hear German politicians say, Israel is a democracy, and the problem is this government. The problem is Netanyahu. The problem is this fascistic government who took over this democracy. But this democracy, this so-called democracy, when the liberal left, which is kind of this liberal left center call it, it's half of the population. When a genocide started to happen, they cannot say they didn't know about it. It was open to see for everybody, for the whole world knows about it for 20 months now. They didn't go on the street to protest against a genocide. They are doing it out of their own class interest, out of trying to fight Netanyahu and keep their hegemony. This war is bad in their eyes because this war is not good for the liberal Israeli society. So I think, just to finish it up, when we speak about opposition in Israel, I would know what are we really speaking about, because it's practically non-existent.
Yes, thank you. It's a bit what Ilan Pape calls squaring the circle, and to try to be a liberal occupier and a liberal genocider. Yes. Thank you. Next up, we will hear from Nora. And Nora, I want to know, how are women crucial, in the Palestinian liberation struggle? And what I'm personally really interested as a feminist, what is the solidarity, the feminist solidarity or women's solidarity here with women in Gaza, in Palestine? Is there any? And also talk about the archive that you are building.
Many questions. Thanks also for having me here. I think what is important for me, or what Palestinian feminism taught me, actually, that our feminism is never singular. So we can't have a free woman without a free Palestine, or we can't have a free Palestine without a free woman. And what I also think, and I was reflecting a lot on this, that Palestinian feminism was also a feminism of resistance. We had the first Palestinian Women Union established actually in 1921, and was leading actually the demonstrations against the British colonial rule. We know, I think here in Germany, we always saw in the first Intifada the boys throwing the rocks, but it was actually also women leading the popular uprising. They organized strikes, boycotts, but also educational activities, health activities, and so on. So I think, Palestinian feminist movements or women movements always played a huge role and continue to play a huge role. We heard about the Sumud, the march, but I think also Sumud is really important to understand also in the Palestinian context as a form of resistance, because it actually challenges the forms or enforced erasure. So when we think about the logic of elimination as one central aspect of settler colonialism, and women actually also, again, playing a leading role in the Sumud, so being there, steadfast on their land, resisting to go, rebuilding their homes. Again, I think we can't think about the Palestinian resistance without thinking also of the feminist and women movements. But also, again, what the Palestinian feminists told me, that it's not only about fighting for equality or women's rights or fighting against patriarchy, but our fight is also interwoven into the fight against the oppression, into the fight against the settler colonialism. And I think this makes, for me, also the Palestinian identity always a political identity. So I don't know, we had discussions about what it means for us to be Palestinians lately with a group. And I always rejected to have a national identity because I reject in general nation states. So for me, I think being Palestinian and also considering myself as a feminist, it's actually a political identity, and this makes it then easier also actually to see the connection with other struggles, no? Because I don't see it as a national liberation only, but I see it as a liberation from oppression. And I think being Palestinian, especially here in Germany now, was not or continues not to be that easy. And especially when it comes to so-called white feminism, which actually talks about us Palestinian women being freed from Hamas, and has been very, very harmful actually in reproducing this, the images of the Palestinian woman as a victim, which need to be freed. And yeah, I think I didn't see solidarity from white feminists, but we had a lot of solidarity, to continue to have a lot of solidarity from international groups, internationalist groups, which I think, yeah, was for me also, I remembered we had also a lot of talks with our Kurdish comrades, and this helped me, for example, also to think about beyond national liberation, but also thinking about liberation as also self-determination and not within the framework of a nation state. But yeah, I think the white feminism, I mean, we had a white feminist foreign policy, which was enabling and adding and abetting to the genocide, no? So I think for me, and this is also historically, I mean, white feminism has always also been crucial to legitimize colonial encounters, no? And I think this is why also feminism is actually used to delegitimize Palestinian resistance. And I also, yeah, don't have so much interest in joining alliances with white feminism, but I think it was, yeah, quite harmful also over the course of the years. And should I also talk now about the archive? Oh, yes. So maybe bringing it back also to different forms of resistance in the Palestinian context. So we have resistance as, yeah, political resistance, politically organized resistance, armed resistance, but also the resistance of communities to counter the erasure. And we came actually together in Berlin in 2023, but I think beginning of the year, because we saw actually that our existence here in Germany is also not only repressed but also erased. So when you look even at the statistics, official statistics would say we have 7,000 Palestinians in Germany and 600 living in Berlin, which I think then we know almost all. And this is because Palestine is not recognized as a state, and this why German statistics don't count Palestinian nationals. And I think this already, it's also quite similar with the Kurdish communities here, where we also don't have numbers. It actually is the first step to erase our collective existence, and especially given that Palestinian diaspora in Germany is the biggest diaspora actually in Europe. So it's estimated to be 250 to 300,000 instead of 7,000. So for us, actually, this was kind of a motivation to come together because, yeah, there's not a lot of knowledge, and if there are knowledge, it's very, yeah, charged with stereotypes and also racist narratives. So we came actually together as an archive to, yeah, resist and counter also the knowledge, the hegemonic knowledge that exists about us. So we are doing different kinds of activities. We are collecting oral histories of people. We also collect memory pieces, which is actually one of the nicest things. So where people tell their story, also what connects them to Palestine. We had, for example, the stones of the demolished house of the village of one person who actually was also second generation, and the family left to Lebanon during the Nakba. And they were only now, after a few years, like I think almost 18 years, when they got the citizenship, able to return. So yeah, for us it's not only collecting the history, but also, again, it's not about only documenting, but it's again also a form of resistance, because we actually have, for example, also someone who have papers of the ownership of the house, no? So it also documents and can give us a basis for calling also for the right to return and the repatriation. So yeah, we see it also as a very political act as well.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you actually for, if I can just say something quick about this, what you just mentioned about the feminist idea being co-opted. and used and instrumentalized to really frame the whole Palestinian issue as an ideological issue of a reactionary and patriarchal movement that has to be fought, instead of a land issue and instead of an issue of settler colonialism, of apartheid and now genocide. So it's really convenient, yeah, to use this feminist framing, this white feminist framing, and it's enraging. It's enraging to see that and to experience this. Yeah. So, Dilara, Nora already mentioned like how this is, how there's like interchanging ideas, and maybe you can speak to the Kurdish movement and how it has managed until now, and maybe also in the future, to continue to sustain. What are the practices? What can we learn for building solidarity from the Kurdish movement?
Thank you that I was also invited here to the panel. It's actually my 4th panel on this topic, and I find it very interesting that since Assad fall, there's more this discussion between the Kurdish movement and the Arabic, or the movement in the Arabic world, which is actually really good because, there were also discussions before, but mostly in Germany, we discuss the struggle of self-determination of the Kurds isolated from the region, and not including in a struggle which will liberate the whole Middle East, or the so-called Middle East. So it's actually really nice to be here and to have this discussion, and I like it too that it's going on. Like, as I said, with Abu Hajar, it's my 2nd panel even about this topic at some point. So it is really good to have these discussions. Maybe to explain at some point, now comes the Marxist part, why the right of self-determination and the struggle of oppressed parts of the society is something revolutionary. It comes actually from the ideology of nationalism, which is part of bourgeois ideology, which helps to divide the class in some parts of the class who are better than the other one, which you can see also you can see in Turkey, you can see in Syria, in Iran, in Iraq. So the Kurds are the biggest ethnic group without a state. And they are divided in these 4 countries. And all of these countries, they use nationalism, chauvinistic nationalism, to oppress the Kurds, so that during the oppression there's not a big revolt or rage against the state from the other part of the society. So the part who's maybe not Kurdish and who is actually the superior part of the state itself. And we can see that this is very important part by the building of state of Turkey. So Turkey builds the state after killing more than 1 million Armenians. They are not the same religion. They don't have the same ethnicity. And with the Kurds, it's like they have somehow the same religion. Like 90% of them are Sunni Muslims. And the other part we can, massacre and kill, which is happening after that. So Turkey, the state itself, was built on the massacre and the genocide of the Armenians. And until now, they do these massacres against, for example, the Alevi in Turkey, against the Kurds, against the leftists, who were also part of the most minority groups in Turkey, against the Greeks, etc., etc. So fighting against that is a revolutionary act itself, and the right for self-determination also. And when we look to that question, we see especially that the PKK, the Kurdish Workers' Party, who were actually, they started as a party, as a Leninist, Marxist organization. After the military putsch in the 80s in Turkey, they started to arm themselves, to went in exile, and also then to fight as a guerrilla against the Turkish state, but also in Iran and in Syria, and some moments also in Iraq. And in that struggle, for example, in the beginning they actually fought it together with the PFLP in Lebanon against Israel, and they were for a long time in Syria until now. So yeah, there were some. There were not just some, but there were a connection between these both struggles. So yeah, the biggest group, the biggest fighting group was and is the PKK. And then we have different approaches how to get the right of the Kurds inside of the society, and especially in Turkey we have different different parties to try on a democratical way to go inside of the parliament and, you know, to fight for the rights of the Kurdish people, because of this chauvinistic and the nationalist idea, and that they are some part of the working class who feel themselves superior and better than the other. Kurds always were underdeveloped. Like when you go in the region of the Kurds in Syria, when you go in Iran, in Turkey, every time they are economically underdeveloped. This is not just out of, just happened like that. But it is a plan actually from its state itself, why they don't want this region to develop also economically. So in Turkey, if we have this party like the HDP, and now they called DEM, but half of their people who went in the parliaments are in prison, and until now, and like besides of the PKK, like guerrilla fighters, they are in prison because they were considered terrorists. It's also the people who were elected from their own people, who are in prison since 1 century, for example. And in Syria, we have the moment that Assad, like both Assads, they created actually just for the Kurds 2 extra categories. It was the Maktoum, the Ajanib, and wait, I wrote down. It is the Ajanib, which is foreigners, and Maktoumin, unregistered. So with that, you don't have at all the Syrian passport, you don't have the right as a Syrian person, and you will get other rights. And this actually was the reason why also a lot of Kurds weren't part of the society, couldn't be part of the society, and they started to organize themselves. And also in Syria there were a lot of Kurdish parties actually. I wrote from professor who wrote the history of the Kurdish parties in Syria, that they really liked to separate themselves a lot of times, and that is actually true. There's a big pictogram of groups, Kurdish groups with different ideologies. Sometimes they just break in two because they didn't like each other, but they had the same ideology. Like, it was very interesting. So I cannot go further in it, but after the Syrian Revolution, during the Syrian Revolution, 2011, with the Arab uprising, there were also biggest demonstration in Serkaniye and Amude, and also the local coordination committees in Amude and Serkaniye were really big actually, and they organized every Friday also demonstrations against the Assad system. And they were also from the Arabic population solidarity with the Kurds, so there were the Azadi Friday, where they went actually on that. Azadi means freedom of Kurdish, for that also together on the street in whole Syria. And they were trying to build something together, to build an opposition together with the Kurds, but at some point on one hand, the Arab chauvinism, which never accepted, actually, like the majority of them, the right of self-determination of the Kurds. And on the other side, then later on, after 2012, 2013, the political decisions of the PYD, which is the Syrian part of the PKK, which tried to establish an autonomous region in Syria during the war. And at some point also had with that, and because they didn't find the right of self-determination in the opposition, that they had this neutral upcom, I don't know what is in English, agreement with the system, so that they can build their autonomous region. And on the other side, Assad has to, the Syrian army has to leave Rojava. And in that, we all know the heroic fight of the Kurds in Kobani against ISIS, and the latest, I want to wrap it up. The latest news is the the dissolution of the PKK. So they will lay down their weapons if if everything goes well. But if there's discussion or questions on that, I can go further in. But with that, also the situation for the Kurds will change. But what is for me, and especially as a Marxist, which is very important to underline, is that even if the PKK is dissoluting and laying down the arms, this doesn't mean that the right of self-determination of the Kurds or the Palestinians or the other minorities is down the table. It actually means even now we have to push it more, that the Kurds can and have to decide themselves, even if it's in Turkey, if it's in Syria, if it's in Iraq, and if it's in Iran, how and why and how they want to be part or don't be part of the society. They have to fight for that. And then, as a Marxist, I would go in and say, yes, you have the right for self-determination, but it is better to fight in this fight for self-determination, which is a revolutionary act against the system itself, together with the oppressed parts of the society which you are living in, with the Arabs, with the Turks, with the people in Iran, the people in Iraq. And we have to fight together for a state where we all have the same rights, where we all have the right to live in dignity. And this is actually the part that I would go. I would go inside of the movement. I'm going inside of the movement, and this is what I'm standing side by side and fighting for the right of self-determination, but then also fighting for going further than that, for going for a solution for the whole area, and as you said in the beginning, also for the world, because we cannot stop just in some borders in, I don't know, between Greece and Turkey, for example, and then say, we will not help you doing a revolution there, but we have to go further on, and then, yeah. Okay, let's finish it there, because I think I talked a lot.
Thanks to all of you. And if I can add something, because in this whole context, let's not mention the European role. Yeah, because if we talk about Israel, if we talk about Syria, Palestine, the Kurdish movements, etc., we must not forget who is benefiting from all the division, from all the wars, from everything. Yeah, it's the OG. Yeah, the European system that is really benefiting from the whole colonial and imperial structures that are keeping up the divisions. So maybe we should just keep that in the back of our minds while we speak about contradictions, yeah, that we see in all these movements, in all these respective struggles. There's always contradictions, but there's also always the Europeans, and by that I also mean, of course, the whole so-called Western system as a whole, the imperial system as a whole, but let's always mention it alongside this reality, yeah. And I thought it was very interesting that you talked about self-determination. It was the first time that the word came up now in this panel, and I find it a very interesting word because it's also used to not, like in the instance of Palestine, to not create a sovereign nation, like a sovereign Palestinian state, you know. There's a lot of talk about the self-determination of the Palestinians, they're the authority, blah, blah. But there's not a sovereign state, even though at the end you reject the nation state idea. So there's all these, how do we look at this? And just 1 second. And then from there, maybe you've heard each other speak. What have you learned about each other's struggles in the recent times? What thoughts have come up while hearing each other speak? So I spoke a long time now. I just want to throw the ball into the court and just have a ping pong.
Sorry, I take it now. I was wondering because I'm questioning this a bit because I don't aim for a sovereign nation state, and I think the very nature of our statelessness is actually, and this I think was interesting also with talking to the Kurdish, is that our very existence is actually the struggle, no? So when you look at the Verfassungsschutz, I don't know what it's called in English.
Intelligence?
Yeah, it's more than the beyond, huh? The German.
I think you would say the intelligence services. Yeah, secret services, intelligence services.
So they now categorized secular Palestinian extremism as a form of extremism. And they write actually that it's a diverse groups of individuals and networks, but what they all have in common, that they are against Israel, Israel's existence as a state, and calling it apartheid and so on. So the very fact extremist part of the Palestinian movement here is that they reject the nation state, you know, or the one state. But I think it's interesting because it shows us also how, you know, it's like why we shouldn't, in my opinion, maybe I'm also a bit alone with this, but I would never, I don't think we should fight for national liberation, no? Because it's nation states are a product of modernity, a product of capitalist imperialist systems. So I think our liberation can't be within the nation state. So yeah, this is what I wanted to question here.
By the end of the 60s and the beginning of the 70s, where Israel was understood as an expanded hand of the imperialist, capitalist modernity of the West, right? And that definition you will also see by not only the Palestinian left, Marxist left, but also by someone like Abdullah Öcalan, who described it literally as a product of European Western modernity, capitalist modernity. And therefore the solution was never to replicate the model. By replicating the model, replicating capitalist nation-state modernity, we will be playing the oppressor game, and therefore we won't reach anything. And therefore was the thing that in Germany, and here where we end up being in Germany again, it was considered the border between being a good Palestinian or a bad Palestinian. What do you envision for the solution? As long as you play within the two-state solutions, you're still okay. We can consider you Palestinian, too much Palestinian, but you're still okay. You play within the game. The moment that we speak of one-state solution, then we cross the limit, we cross the boundary. And the one-state solution is exactly what will, in our vision, as Palestinian, Syrian, progressive, Marxist forces in the region, in Southwest Asia, we always considered the one-state solution to be the solution that will cut not only for the rights of Palestinians, but for also the rights of Jews and everyone living in that area, in that region, from the river to the sea, in the whole region, and beyond it also, to the expanded region, Southwest Asia as a whole, to eliminate or to cut that expanded hand. That extended hand is to play against its founding conditions by creating a nation state and assuming that the nation state is the only way to protect people, which is a European model based on genocide. And therefore, when Turkey wanted to build its own nation state, it genocided, because genocide is not an external to the statecraft, to the European Western statecrafts. That's why Israel is considered to be a Western state. It is playing by the rules. Genocide, colonialism, imperialism are at the foundation of the state of Israel. And therefore, the only possible solution will be to cut with these three pillars by building a non-nation, one-state solution between the two entities of water that will grant equal rights to everyone. Equal access not only to rights, because you mentioned the Palestinian of 48, saying that they don't enjoy equal rights, but it's not only the equal rights, but at the core of it is the equal access to resources, which, as long as we don't have it, we will always produce the conflict again, in my opinion.
Can I add to that? So, first of all, I agree with everything said. No, seriously, also the negation, or at least the presenting the problematic of the idea of nation state being part of the solution, which is, we've seen, have been pushed by the West and also hypocritically by Israel in Oslo, and Fatah giving up and trying to go into this process, and also even Hamas, since the end of the 90s, agreed to go to 67 as the first point. But since you already mentioned it, I think if we want to start speaking about one-state solution, I mean, it has been spoken about a lot, and actually there were very interesting discussions about it in Israeli and Palestinian Arab Marxism already in the 60s, in the 70s, and you know, Ghassan Kanafani spoke and everything. I mean, it was on the table as part of the intellectual discussion. But we have to, first of all, to acknowledge, and maybe this will be a theme that will come up again and again when we speak maybe about different movements also in this country, that the theoretical and also the concretization of what that actually means in terms of how we want to achieve something like that is completely lacking. Because the concept of class as the contradiction which by its own solution could actually lead to a solution like that. You know, I can, for example, you know, I'll try to be devil advocate a little bit, you know. It would be very difficult for me, and I want to stress again, I mean, what you just presented is exactly what I wish for. And not even, not thinking this would do justice, because, I mean, if you could ever make right what already happened, I doubt it. But just as a really practical solution, we need to become concrete. And right now, on both sides, on all sides involved, there is no concept of what that actually means. You spoke about means of production. Who's ruling who has actually the sources in his hand? There's no consciousness, there's not a class with this kind of consciousness in the Israeli society, for example, at all. Like the Israeli working class, which would have to become an integral part of this solution you just spoke about. Otherwise, why would it ever happen? As traditionally never really recognized itself as a class who can see beyond the Israeli territory. Even if they have some kind of a concept of class of themselves, the Palestinian person on the other side of the border is sure not in their eyes, in any possibility, part of a class if we come into a one-state solution. Now, this is where the whole problematic starts for, you know, because we can speak in Marxist terms, but we have to acknowledge that this theory, as a theory which offers practical solutions, is being out of power now, unfortunately, for very long. We need to start speaking about it concretely, meaning this, as long as the Israeli working class, for example, doesn't see that liberating itself, and I say, you know, it sounds a little bit crazy now to speak about a nation who is doing a genocide and horrible other crimes, how this kind of population can liberate itself as well. How a part of this Israeli population, to speak about their liberation now, it sounds completely, you say skurril in German, it's like, sounds crazy. But I don't see how one-state solution together with the Palestinians can ever reach there without this happening. This is a condition in my eyes. So the problem is this. The Israeli elite, for example, has traditionally, and I also mentioned it a little bit before, not directly, but in a sense, they had a very comfortable situation. While they were, the ruling class is historically, could always be sure, the ruling class could always be historically sure that any kind of inner problem, any kind of discontent based on class structure in Israel, that means social, financial at the end, you know, would always be forgotten the moment we can instigate a war. And this is happening again and again. You know, the Israeli people, it's like something you just say. Every time Netanyahu has a problem, you can expect, you know, something to happen. You know, it could be in Lebanon, it could be in Gaza. Something has to happen.
And now Iran.
And now, okay, this, I mean, it's more complicated than that. We shouldn't present it as if it's that simple. But if we want to start this discussion, we need to start speaking about classes. We need to start speaking about classes who could break borders. And if I want to really make the point in its most tragical manifestation, the Israeli elite is sending soldiers to Gaza. And if you look at the demographical, or I don't know if demographical is the right word, but how the Israeli army is built, who are really the people who are going to Gaza and entering the homes and killing people? You know, the pilots is a little bit something else. The pilots are a little bit like elite, because you gotta have, you usually come from a very strong background. You know, it's not even middle class, it's almost more, you know? But the people who really go in, and the people who kill, who do the dirty work in Gaza, I'm sorry, it sounds very bad to say it, but I have to say it. Those are exactly the people who the Israeli elite has been keeping down and oppressing from beginning on. So actually, you've been sent. Let's imagine for one moment we're in one state and those borders are imaginal. The elite between the Jordan and the sea is sending the one lower class to massacre other part of the lower class. If there's one state solution, they together have to develop a class consciousness and get rid of the elite. And I think it's also viable to say that, I mean, what is now Fatah, I mean, in the Palestinian society? It's also a kind of elite who is helping the Israeli elite, you know, like Franz Fanon explained so beautifully, it's happening everywhere. So if we want to start speaking about that, actually, this would be a place where we should really start to instigate some movement to see if out of the class consciousness of working class in the Israeli society and I know it sounds crazy now because we're in the middle of a genocide, but it's going to stop at one moment. And we also have the West Bank and the Israeli Arabs, also the Israeli Palestinians, they also play a big role in that because most of them are working class. So between those classes, between those populations which actually make theoretically one class, maybe there's something that could happen. And I think this is something, I mean, if you think about Marx's attitude towards nationality, he wrote very little about it. You know, maybe you see it in 18th Brumaire, things will go in that direction. But it's always a problem when Marxists try to speak about nationality. It's always a problem, you know, because if you speak about self-determination and you tell the Palestinians now, don't do it through a state. So I mean, the alternative is that for them to wait that the Israeli working class will wake up and say, okay, let's do something together against Netanyahu and the elites. It's not where we are. That's, I think, why we have to be quite more, a little bit more sophisticated about the concept of nation, what it means now. That's why also the PFLP was speaking about, or Balad in Israel, you know, people like Hanin Zoabi and Azmi Bashar, they speak about let's first try to get our own state as a non-permanent solution towards a solution of one class. I don't want to say what I think is better, and I think what happened in the last 20 months is completely turned everything, you know, all the cards are now, it's very difficult to see now where it's going to come from, but for sure there are options that weren't here until now. Because maybe part of the Israeli society is going to wake up in a few months and understand we did a genocide, and something has to change here concerning the social direction, the social financial direction this society wants to step to after this is finished.
Thank you. We have seen a lot of notes being taken. So let's hear the thoughts.
I mean, I opened the thing with self-determination, so I have to explain it a little bit more, why I think it's an important question to raise, even if the movement or the leaders of the movement, as the PKK, doesn't open this question since the 2000s, since they've changed their ideology to democratic confederalism. I think that the oppression of nation creates a deep division within the working class itself. So the division between oppressed and oppressor nation is fundamental characteristic of the global system. So when we ask ourselves, how can we start with the consciousness and how can we break the consciousness, we have to understand at some point why there is even a nation state itself, and why does this nation state also has to have a national ideology, so that the workers from the oppressor nation are culturally, ideologically and politically integrated into the national project, even if this national project doesn't give them anything, as we know, right? But it's this struggle for democratic rights, for example, the democratic rights of votes, as in Syria, is actually necessary to have an election, or in Turkey to have democratic elections, or even especially the struggle for national liberation or self-determination is inherently, or does inherently raise the question of power. So who and why should this and that person or this and that party lead us, or lead this state, or lead this region, or this whatever we want to call it. So it raises the question of power inside of this society right now, and raising the question of power in a capitalist system, in an imperialist system, always does mean also to at some point crack the system at some parts, which not just by raising it, but also to open this question. So why shouldn't actually we as Kurdish people shouldn't have the right for self-determination? Why is it on the hand of the Arabs in Syria? Why is it on the hand of the Turks in Turkey, for example, what we are doing in the areas that we are living in? And this question itself is helping, but is helping to make this one, movement of questioning of power. But as revolutionaries, we shouldn't stop there. This shouldn't be our goal. This is the goal. Like, okay, we just want to, have this right of self-determination, and then, the Kurds decide whatever they want to decide. I mean, self-determination doesn't mean building nation state as Europeans did, blah, blah, blah. It means to decide themselves how they want to make a living, or which part of living they want to do, or which structure they want to choose themselves. So this is the important part. And I wouldn't stop there. So I would say this is their rights. We should fight for the rights. But then we wouldn't stop there. We would say creating another nation state, as you both said, will not help us. It will just, further increase expropriation, etc., and destroying of the nature and destroying of the humans, etc. Besides of sexism, it will, not help us at all. But it will help the question, and we should then start to talk with the people also, that we shouldn't just stay when we have a nation, but we should fight that we have somehow a federation of this, the populations in the Middle East. I mean, as socialists, we would say Socialist Federation of the Middle East, blah, blah, blah. But, we have to think about more ways how to overcome national borders, how to overcome this national ideology. But right now, we cannot just go inside of the movement and think that they have a revolutionary consciousness, but we have to create this consciousness. And creating this revolutionary consciousness is asking this question of power, and then asking the question, who's having what? What you mean? There is no right of Rückkehrrecht, return, if we not ask the question, who owns the land, who owns the houses, who owns blah, 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 blah. We cannot make right of return of 6 million Palestinians and not asking these questions to seize the properties and seize the, the factories, the land, the houses, etc. And then give it coordinated to the people, who needed this. And also start to produce for the benefits of the society and not for the profit. and actually asking the question, what is the role of the oppressed working class, is really hard. Because it means we have to understand as Marxists that the working class of the oppressed nation, let's say we are in Turkey, so the Turkish working class, they have to have a play in the right for the Kurds. If they don't, the Kurds cannot actually fight alone this struggle. They have to fight together. But for that, the Turkish working class, first of all, have to show that they really mean it. And they have to show in a long way that they would fight together for the rights of the Kurds in every question they are raising right now. For example, in Turkey, they are raising the question that this petty bourgeois leader, Imamoğlu from the CHP, got arrested, blah, 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 and they went on the streets for democratic rights. But they didn't said, since 1 century, the Kurds and their elected leaders are in prison. Now it's one of us. They don't raise the question of the Kurds and their right in Turkey. So the working class in this oppressor nation has to show their solidarity. They have to show that they mean it. And they have to actually go under the leadership of the oppressed nation. So it is the same for the Israeli working class. I believe that most of them will leave the country when there will be a revolution, because they will not accept that they are now having the same rights as the Palestinians, but there will be a part maybe who will stay there, of course, and then they have to gather under the leadership of the Palestinians to show, yes, we really mean it to fight together in this struggle, and also to get the Vertrauen, the trust, because this is a huge question actually. How can you gain the trust back, or how can you gain the trust as an Israeli from the working class who's also expropriated? They don't have a super nice living, and also the war is also on their costs, right? It's not the health people, like the people who have the worth and who are rich, who are actually giving money for the war. It's the people who are working there who are paying the price for this war. And gaining back the trust is actually a hard process, and it just can be when they fight together for the rights of the Palestinians and under a Palestinian leadership.
Thank you. Nora.
Yeah, I just wanted to again question a bit this one state, two state solution. Like, first solution, it's as if it's a conflict to be solved. I think Palestinians have the right to their land. And I think often these terms of finding a solution like neglects that, we have the right to return, the right to our land. And also we are living de facto in a one state. It's an apartheid state. We are not having kind of reaching a two-state solution or so on. So we're already having a one-state solution, which is an apartheid state, which is a settler colonial state, where Palestinians are objected to systems of oppression and violence and genocide. So I think this whole debate about 1, 2 states also hides this fact that we already have a system there which actually needs to be transformed and decolonized. And I agree that with decolonization, I mean, the right to return, it's still, and we were just talking about return before, but in general also, we have 6 million people who some actually live 10 minutes from their hometowns away, Like when people said in the German media, how can they celebrate that they run through the fences on 7th of October? It was people who lived since decades next to their village, which they could never visit. So I think we should have an honest discussion that we have a one state, and I think it should be better to think, and I think we need to think practically about it. One country, one land. But how to transform the system of apartheid and make it in a way self-determined with rights for everyone and so on. But I think it starts actually when we not look for a solution, but ways how to transform it.
I am the one that brought the one-state solution to the discussion, so I feel like I need to defend it. It's not the point right now. It's not the point. I don't need to defend a solution or not. I'm saying I don't really think it's a one state. It's a de facto one state right now. I think one of the most effective colonial tactics that Israel has used is to create 3 different realities in the region between the river and the sea, one in the West Bank, one in the 48 territories, and one in Gaza, and create a hierarchy between these three places, right? That's why you said Palestinians of the 48, they have something to lose, the illusion of something to lose. I don't think it's something to lose, I think it's an illusion. And that is a complete different reality to the one that you have in Gaza. So it's not a one state in the way that we are talking about right now. What makes a difference to it is that even if it's a de facto one state, it's a nation state, and the one that I said that me and the line of thoughts in the region in Southwest Asia defend is the one that is exactly the Gegenteil, the opposite, the antithesis of the nation state that is practicing Jewish supremacy in that region, regardless of whether there are Jewish settlers in Gaza or not. There is a Jewish supremacy practiced in Gaza, right? And that's what we need to be exactly the opposite to it. Now, to what you said, I love the pessimism of the intellect. It's integral part of our daily life. But there is the pessimism of the optimism of the will. Let's also say that, referring to Gramsci. Right in 1989, James Ferguson, a U.S. American, a white U.S. American who could be called the white savior because he was very concerned with South African apartheid. He wrote an amazing book called The Anti-Politics Machine. And there he describes his observation, what he learned, that he went to South Africa as a white savior. And when he returned to the US and they asked him, what do we do to help? Because now you are the expert, right? You're the white person who was in South Africa, so we need to ask you, what do we do to help as good liberals, good white liberals? And he told them, well, you need to, what I realized after this long endeavor is that you need to fight against capitalism in your own country. That was a surprising answer, so they didn't understand it and said, no, what we mean is what we actually can do to help them. And like, fight against capitalism in your countries. And ironically, 2 years later, the apartheid system was ended, right? Dissolved. Nobody expected that. According to that book, which I find always very necessary to go back to always, is that nobody expected that in 1989 that the apartheid is about to fall. No one was ready to argue what it means economically also. Therefore, one of the things that unfortunately did not really work in South Africa was to reconsider the access to wealth. So it's created a society where, yes, we all have equal access to rights, but yet the white minority has the absolute majority of the wealth in South Africa, which we will learn from. But what I mean is we need to make it as the normality. We need to be ready for when it happens, that we are not so stuck intellectually in discussing what and how, but we are determined with our decision that there could be no free Palestine without an anti-capitalist Palestine also. That anti-capitalism should be at the core of it, that we always have an eye to something that, like Oslo, will not be the solution. And even if it is promoted by UN and by all players, and Fatah was prominent at that time when Oslo was signed, Fatah was very prominent, not like today. Yet it couldn't do something. Actually, you could argue that it has also worsened the situation because the economic aspects, the economic factors of imperialism, of the colonial project of Israel was not discussed in Oslo, right? So what Israel and what the West could do, what Imperial West could do through Oslo is to create a puppet of Palestinians to be the comprador of the Israeli interest in West Bank. And that's what I mean by saying one state solution, is to keep that model in mind so that we have it as an alternative when because it will happen and it's not in our hand. What we can do here is to oppose the ruling class in Germany, and that will benefit Palestine. That will fuel the battle to liberate Palestine. But when it happens, we need to be ready, and it might happen at any point. And we are closer than ever.
Thank you, Abu Hajar.
Can I just answer to that?
Yeah, 1 second, because I want to inject some thoughts into the discussion, and then you just take it from there and respond or not respond, or just respond to what you wanted to initially respond. But I wanted to, because we talk about class recently in the last minutes, maybe someone can speak to the intersections of class with race and gender also, and what that means maybe for the overcoming of the solidarity that can be built, yeah, and also the pessimism of the way you called it. I want to remind us of Angela Davis's quote that we have to act as if we were able to radically change the world in any day, yeah. So to have some pragmatic optimism in a way, and also I want to ask, given that there's a genocide actually going on, what the relation is between the acute need to end a genocide and this trajectory of class uniting to overcome the bigger system, to overcome the nation state, etc. So what is a necessary step now? Can we even think about it, or do we really focus on this long trajectory? But you know, there's a genocide going on, so this contradiction or this difficulty, dilemma, yeah, that we have also going on.
I'm just going to say one sentence to finish that subject, because we're actually very close to each other, and it's just important. Then I will just give the gender question and classes to somebody who specializes in that, if there's someone here. The point I was trying, if it sounded like pessimism of the intellect, I was just trying to point to the fact that de facto, that area, you know, between the Jordan and the sea, this kind of thinking is completely underdeveloped and almost disappeared. We have to acknowledge that Marxist thought right now in Israel is non-existent, and as far as I know, also in the Palestinian movement, it's as weak as ever. But if we look at our enemy, people like Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump, they are actually the ones who are much ahead of us. They are thinking financially very clearly. Trump and Netanyahu also speak in those terms. They always speak about peace, which will be based on a financial peace. You know, they even have this expression, like Trump really thinks he will buy this with money, and Bibi really thought something like 10 years ago, he came up with this financial peace expression. He thought, I could bribe the Palestinians, make their life, or at least not in Gaza, but in the West Bank and Fatah, or even in Gaza, make them give up on their right to return and coming back to their homes if their life would be good enough. So actually they have a real neoliberal, neocon theory behind it, and our is just lacking. If you look at who's fighting right now for that, and this is maybe something which could also come up if we speak about Germany later, it's one thing to say we need a revolution and what does a Marxist think and everything, but we have to acknowledge it's not something which is right now inside the movement, the pro-Palestinian movement, strong enough. There is not enough theoretical, abstract or concrete thought in that direction. So I actually completely agree with you that this is how this is what we should achieve, but we need to be honest that we're very far away from it right now. You know, if we are speaking about this here on the panel in idealistic terms, I completely agree. But if I'm honest, and this is pessimism of the intellect again, we need to sit and think where should we start, because it's almost point zero.
I'm just gonna add 2 words. What I meant to say by using James Ferguson as an example is Palestine has its own forces. They know how to do it. We are here in Germany. I don't want to fall in the trap of the condescending solidarity where I here can decide what they need to do there. You know what I mean? Is concerning here, I use James Ferguson to say, we are here, and if we understand the conflict as conflict of extended imperialism, extended capitalism, here we have to centralize anti-capitalist struggle as a form of solidarity. So that the Palestinian movement in Germany, one of its essential features is to be an anti-capitalist movement. And to push for it, to push for that, to be in solidarity with Greek workers here, because that is part of liberating Palestine as well. That's what I meant to say.
Can only agree. It's wicked.
And I think I wanted just to add to the genocide which is ongoing, which we see every day, we hear from our families, and the long vision. And I think exactly what you just said, we need to have this long vision despite the, in times of genocide. Because what we have, at least as Palestinians for me, is that we have to react to every massacre that is being made, to every forms of repression we experience here, and this actually often hinders us to think politically. Like when I thought about my no state as a solution, like I thought about it not in intellectual terms, you know, because I don't have the time at the moment or the feeling that I could sit and read a book. But I do think that we need actually to start being, and I think it's also happening, I would actually not say that there is no communist or anti-capitalist thought within the movement. I think I personally learned a lot also from other resistance groups or groups who, intersectional, other struggles. But I feel this is often a mood, this reaction mood, which is also imposed by us, but by this violence we live. And I think only way to actually fight against this violence is also to get the time, like even if it's super hard. I don't know how to frame it at the moment, but I think, yeah, we are enforced in this kind of reaction without having the space, and I think therefore there is a need now to think, actually have a political thought or future thought as well.
Yes, I mean, what after you said it with this, that we should fight here against capitalism. I think, because most of the panel that I was in the last weeks, it was more the question, what can we do there in the region itself, but also actually we have to focus to ask what should we do here in Germany. And it's actually even very important to act here in Germany, because we are here in the center of the beast, we are here in the center of the imperialist country. We have USA, we have China, and I mean Germany and Russia, which are next to the, like Germany more next to USA, Russia more next to China, but they are still imperialist countries, and Germany, who is a weapon supplier to Israel, has and plays a very big role in defending the political acts what Israel is doing with the war, with the genocide, with attacking every country next to Israel. They are always defending because they have a political interest in that region, and they don't want to lose Israel. So they don't want to lose that they can play the political, like they can play the dog who is in the Middle East spreading the interest of the imperialist Western countries. And this is very important to understand, and then to come back to Germany, that Palestine can be a question where we can start in the consciousness of the people what they have right now. Oh, okay, killing babies is bad, bombing hospital is bad, and then from this consciousness of the people that they have, that I mean at some point everyone finds war not good, but to create demands and ways of fighting where we can bring these people from their own consciousness to a consciousness that they can fight against this system in general, against capitalism. And in that fight they have to find a contradiction. So they, for example, fighting against weapons, it is at some point also a contradiction, because weapon is an important part of this society's, how they can, benefit from it. They can get profit from it and health. But when we fight against producing weapons, we will, because of Palestine, for example, or because of other wars that are upcoming or they are right now going on, we can, build on that and we can talk about these questions. So Palestine is an opportunity to fight for against the system also here in Germany, and to start where the people are right now and to bring them in a contradiction. And as you asked the role of class and gender, I would, because we didn't talk about Iran so much.
And white supremacy.
Yes, white supremacy. Okay, but maybe someone else can more put on white supremacy. For example, because we didn't talk about Iran so much, I think that gender and that race plays a very important role in the fight against the capitalism, especially inside of the working class. And we have to acknowledge that there are different demands as people who are fighting for gender equality, and that their demands should be part of our general struggle for liberation. We shouldn't think about the struggle which is just liberating one ethnicity, but without including the question of gender, including the question of race, etc., etc. So when we look to Iran, actually the Jiyan Azadi movement several years ago it was not a movement just, I don't want to wear a hijab. Actually, it was a movement after a long strikes from the workers, from the minor workers, from the chemical industries and from the metal industries in Iran itself. They have actually very big underground working class movement, which will be now interesting when the war will go on. And the bombardments of Israel will go on Iran. And in that moment, the killing of one woman was, brought the people on the streets for equal rights. So very in the beginning of in September, the Kurdish Verein Association, they published a statement that we now should strike and have a general strike for more rights, for equal payments, and etc., and for the rights, etc. So there, even that the woman played a very, very important role in that uprising, but it not just was just a woman's question. It was very much connected with the struggles that the people in general have, rather than gender and race, but they included the question of gender equality. And this is an important thing that we can learn actually from that movement. Now in Germany, the people, Annalena Baerbock suddenly found Jiyan Azadi, and she did a posting with it. And she actually wanted to, not that the people learn from it, because it is easier to say, yes, they are fighting against this bad Islamist, they just want to show their hair, because this is depoliticizing actually the movement, rather than saying there are mass strikes right now going on in this movement, and people are on the streets, and the students are breaking down the gender walls in the universities. They are saying we want to be equal without, if you are male or diverse or woman, etc. And this was an actually important thing that we should also implement in other movements that will upcome, that it should be that their demands for gender equality should be part of the struggle for liberation.
Can I comment on what she said?
Yes.
I want to comment on the first part of
we
your...
have one comment, and then we open up to our audience.
Because you mentioned the Palestinian solidarity movement, or the solidarity to Palestine becoming like a catalysator to try and... Could be, yeah. So I'm sorry, I want to be critical about that, because 20 months ago when it started and the movement went to the streets, this was my first thought. I was going around telling everybody I know, if this movement could develop consciousness in this historical moment, this could become very interesting for the whole politics in the German society. But now I think we have to be honest with ourselves. The German state has a lot of experience with this, with handling this danger. They went very smart about it through defamation, police violence. The whole media got involved to make sure that the Palestinian theme this very small solidarity movement, because they recognize the danger themselves. I mean, the same society 20 years ago, they went out, I wasn't here yet, but they told me they had a demonstration with 500,000 people at Brandenburger Tor against the war in Iraq. But because you mentioned Gramsci before, I think this would be a very, I mean, if we really want to be pessimistic about what's going on right now, only to learn and see where is the danger, where is this state really controlling us, instead of us opening up our consciousness and understanding how we have to fight it. I mean, this is a typical war of position. You know, this is not going to happen tomorrow. This is like really slowly. Now, what I'm noticing, what hurts me the most, is that I hear from many people in the movement sentence like, those Germans, if they still didn't get it, they'll never get it. What happens when you're under such harsh repression, when your family is getting bombed, and the society here, calling itself democratic and everything, is not only completely, you know, they couldn't care less, but they support the people who are bombing you. The danger of estrangement, of alienation, is extremely high. And I think we have to acknowledge a lot of that happened. And this will lead me to now to the optimistic point. I mean, not the optimistic, but being really concrete about what, I mean, we have to get somehow this movement to open itself up to possible partners in this society. I don't say go and do a coalition with I don't even know who I need to, could I mention? There are so many of them, you know, but forget about them. I think
this is
you
where
all
it
know.
becomes difficult.
No. No, I mean, there are many assholes. I mean, look, I don't speak about conservative parties. Forget the CDU. Forget the, okay, forget big parts of the SPD, but they're not all, what's the opposite of victims? Perpetrators, you know? Some of them are completely in a state of, you know, I don't like the word fast consciousness, it sounds too easy, but they really think they live in a free, democratic society, and they cannot even imagine that the only democracy in the Middle East, which is supported by millions, and they did the Holocaust too, and everybody learned from it something, could do something like that for no reason. But we cannot treat them as enemies. I mean, so actually what should be really, we should really start concentrating on is opening up to other parts of the society, especially parts of the society which are also oppressed and mostly don't know it. Of course, we speak about workers. This is what the capitalistic democratic state, as Gramsci showed us and Lenin, that's what they do. They are not even aware why of their lack of freedom, and as for that, they cannot recognize the lack of freedom of the Palestinian community, which is right now historically really positioned. Really, it's an historical moment for this community because they're really positioned at this moment as the real subject who can see the totality of all the problematic in this state. I mean, until the 7th of October, they were just alienated with no agency, but now they got an agency, and they shouldn't give up and become, I mean, I'm not giving them advices, I feel part of it, I have to say. Although a very privileged part of it, okay? But I really think all day, how can I support it? And I see a lot of alienation, which we cannot fall to that. It's like really, it's a chance to change everything in this society. Like you said, it's a really an important moment, and we should search for partners.
Thank you. I think the word, maybe you were not looking for it, but that came to my mind as cognitive dissonance. Of kind of trying to uphold an image that will benefit my own position while slowly understanding that it's not sustainable. And there's a chance in that. Yeah, there's a chance in it.
They have also a lot to lose. It's not like, getting these people to cooperate with us.
Yes.
No, it's a big expectation, but it's possible.
It's a lot to lose, but it's also a lot to gain. There's a lot to gain. There's a lot to gain from having a new analysis, from having a broader understanding of what is actually happening. I think it psychologically and mentally it brings you to a different state and into a different life actually, and it's worth it. So there might be material loss. I think the loss that is there is more material, but there's a lot to gain. So thank you so much. Let's have a very big applause for the panel. And let's have your questions now. Let's see. I hope you have, or contributions. Thank you. Yeah, it doesn't have to be always questions. You can also, of course, make it be a statement. But as you can imagine, in 30 minutes, you see the questions. Yeah, in 30 minutes, we are many people and we want to hear as many questions as possible. So please make a conscious effort to keep it short, please.
Yeah, that's not really my style usually, but I will try so hard. And I will also try to end with a question, but let's see about that. So yeah, I thought this whole topic of the consciousness of the Israeli working class is like a really complex thing, and at most times I was also pretty pessimistic about it. And I mean, I think there are a couple of solutions to that. But I am pessimistic about the idea that the Israeli working class will just wake up by itself someday and realize, oh, we did a genocide and we should overthrow our capitalist state. I don't think so. And yeah, I mean, since we live in an international world with international interests, I also would highly doubt that the states that profit from Israel's existence would ever allow a conscious Israeli working class to come into being. I think that's directly against the interests of Germany and the US and all of the supporters of Israel, which is, of course, the worst possible state you can have as of now. But there's also a different side to it, because this points to the fact Israel is not a state that is supported by itself, but it is a state that is supported by its imperial grantors of funding and military and strategic support. And I think this is where the crucial part comes into play when it comes to the Israeli working class consciousness. I believe that their consciousness will only substantially change if the state of Israel is in its by itself called into question. And this is, of course, a question of international solidarity. And this is the question of the working classes of Germany, of the US, and so on. And, well, how, of course, do you get to that point? I mean, we've seen months, and also before the 7th October, of course, very intense activism, especially of Palestinian folks, to try and change the topic of discussion and to try and change public opinion. And we are seeing these effects right now. I mean, there's going to be maybe the biggest demonstration that has happened since the 7th of October now. Perhaps 30,000 people by tomorrow in Berlin. But crucially, also now we see parts of the leftist party that have caved into the constant work of especially Palestinian, but also leftist extremist actors that have worked on these people all the time for them to change their stances. And to come back to that whole idea of which state solution is maybe the good or the bad one, I think this is where the one-state solution comes into play again, because I would not say that the Labour Zionist camp is in opposition, that is not in opposition, but I think the Labour Zionist movement and the idea of a two-state solution is the biggest obstacle for the liberation of the Palestinians, because every time people are at fault with this, what's happening in Palestine, and especially in the West, people come along and say, oh yeah, we have the two-state solution. That's like the morally easy way out, and it has been used to demobilize every movement for really groundbreaking things in Palestine. and kept them in boundaries that have led to what we're seeing now, which is genocide. So I think, and this is something we can do here when we talk about international solidarity and what also white folks as me can do in Germany. When you go to the demonstration tomorrow, talk to people there, talk to people in the huge block of the Linkspartei or whatever, and start dismantling this idea of the two-state solution. Because once the point is reached that the states here or the German bourgeoisie can no longer openly support this genocide, they will fall back to that two-state solution position. And this is where we need to attack. And of course, this points to much more thorough things in the German state. And also to me, and this is where I out myself as a member of Dilara's group, Aus der Nacht, of course raises questions that are much deeper and which relate to, the class contradiction in society. But this is where we need to start, I think. And if we do that, I think we can maybe see change. And I think in this way, this points to the fact that there cannot be a free Palestine without a free world, free Germany. And a free Germany, and Germans don't realize that, cannot happen without a free Palestine. What do you think of that? That's my question.
Thank you. I think that what do you think of that is a very broad question. So I will collect, 1, 2 more questions and then have responses. Yes, and then. I think contributions are also nice. But for the flow of the whole thing, let's have some questions. So if you have questions, raise your hand. Who has questions? Nobody has questions. Everybody wants to make a speech.
One very, very short.
Understandably.
Yeah, how we build a successful social movement in times of emergency. I mean, till now, a massive movement for me is something that will lead to a political change, not just to show solidarity and something that makes us feel good. How we build this.
Okay, thank you. One more? Questions? Maybe in the back. I don't see any. Okay, then let's have another contribution. We don't want to block your thoughts. If you want to contribute just a thought, then go on, of course.
I just have a question. It was not mentioned in the discussion, but I have the question like some 8 days now. Because everybody talks about the nuclear capabilities of Iran. And I want to ask, what do we know about the nuclear capabilities of Israel?
Okay, so that's the question. So we have some questions. First of all, the thoughts about what Dilara's colleague from Arbeiterinnenmacht was elaborating. And then the solidarity in times of war. I mean, the emphasis was on the war aspect, I believe, if I understood it right. And then what do we know about nuclear capabilities of Israel? You don't have to do anything. There's
I thought it's a panel on resistance, you know?
Yes.
I have one more thing to say about resistance because we didn't mention violence.
Yes, okay. So we have one more question here, and then we start.
We talked somehow about connecting the classes together in a class fight and so on. It's part of comment and part of question because usually the lower class oppresses the lowest class. So what we see, I would take Israel for example, the Arab Israelis are more, the Arab Jews are more right than the other Jews, I would think. And you also said that the soldiers in the IDF are from the lowest socio-economical class. So these are the people who are the workers or Palestinian workers or Palestinians should work with, and they are the most extreme. And I think this is not only an Israeli thing, it's all the world. Like usually the lower oppresses the lowest and have the feeling through that they are not oppressed anymore. So how can we make these two work together? Because like there happens the most bloody fight and we want them to work together.
Okay, I will pass the mic to whoever wants to respond. Take this.
Just a short sentence about Israel capabilities, if you really want to know. Israel non-officially has 90 bombs ready, nuclear bombs, according to foreign Berichterstattung, as you say, and about 200 more in potential. That's what Israel actually possesses. And it's not a secret anymore. I think everybody knows it. You can read it on every... New York Times writes about it. Haaretz wrote about it, I think, yesterday, the last time. You just when you speak about in Israel, you have to say it's according to some foreign source. Now, concerning the more interesting, I think, one of the most interesting problem of why would the almost most oppressed class who sees even more oppressed class next under it and even goes and murders it now, why would they wake up and make a coalition with them? First of all, I want to say there's a very interesting theory by Moshe Machover and Akiva O from Matzpen, which was the only really Marxist theoretical, strong theoretical organization in the history of Israel. It practically doesn't exist anymore, but they said already in the 60s that the reason that the working class in Israel will never do a revolution is because the expropriation of the Palestinians is too benefiting for them. Now I want to answer to that, and I will also answer to a comment you made before the person next to you, because I think it's kind of together. I think this kind of thought actually leads to a kind of a dead end that I'm as a, I don't know, as somebody who thought Marx was right, let's call it like that, I'm not willing to get into that. The whole point of why would workers will do a revolution is if they will come to the idea that a possible scenario would benefit them more than the one right now. You could take this theory of Matzpen and say it about every worker at every point of history and say, why the hell would they do it? They always have something to lose. In the case of the Israeli working class who goes and murders in the name of Netanyahu, Netanyahu's the elite in Gaza, they have something to lose because obviously Israeli, not them, but the elites do, and the Israeli state profit a lot from the occupation. But I think the whole point is to say, and I will never argue that right now without pressure from outside, geopolitical changes, economical problems in Israel, but we have to assume at one point you won't get away with genocide with no consequences at all. If we always think pessimistically that nothing will ever happen to them, then probably nothing will happen also concerning that. But I do see a possibility that when pressure starts coming on Israel, if it's because of a long war with Iran, that stuff really becomes unbearable. If it's because of boycott, if it's because Trump decides this is not good for my protectionism economy, whatever, you know? I can see a point where the Israeli, part of the Israeli working class or part of the Israeli society with working class, it's too eng, how do you say eng? It's too narrow, thank you. I actually, you know, the middle class, the low middle class is a part of all this construction. They all go and murder in Gaza in the name of an elite who is profiting and doing businesses with Saudis and Trump, you know? This is all not new. But the moment something changes, they have to think, they may be able to see that there are new coalitions to be made. And I gotta say, racism is something which we always use as an excuse of, the last barrier. Like it's completely impossible to think that Jewish Arab his father was voting for Likud and was racist against Palestinians already in the 60s, and he's been doing that, has it in his blood or something like that. Racism is always, in my opinion, only a manifestation of different materialistic structures and excuses to justify some kind of materialistic oppression. The moment you find yourself closer to that class, the moment they will find themselves closer to the Palestinians, you know? For example, I just give one more example. There's a lot of talk now, not a lot, but there's some talk in the Israeli real left, that a possible coalition, which out of the social point of view, you know, welfare point of view, in Israel, would naturally be now the Orthodox Jews, which are the poorest, it's not even a class, it's the poorest group of people in Israel, and the Israeli Palestinians, which are the second poorest, you know? If those two come together, we speak about 33% of the population. That would be 27 mandates under some circumstances in the Israeli Knesset. If some liberal Zionists will decide to really go and do a government with them and make us a welfare state again, those could go together. This is something which looks right now unimaginable. But I can see possibilities or scenarios when this could become a possibility the moment Israel's economical situation is worsening for real. So we need, I think also as Marxists, all this race stuff, all this hate stuff, you know, these things change like that. I heard from Israeli people who, that the day after the first Oslo part, people who used to visit Gaza, like peace activists, it was always a big thing because you wanted to go to visit Gaza. It was always like activism. The army had to protect you. And you went into Gaza, it was 92, 93. And those people looked at them like they want to kill them. Then this paper was signed, and one day later they went to Gaza, no army around them, and everybody was hugging them. Like for real, I heard it from Nurit Peled El-Hanan. She's one of the most important Israeli activists. She lost also a daughter in the second Intifada, you know? So these things can really change the moment that the social material situation changes. So this is, I only speak about a hope now. I don't see it's viable tomorrow or in 1 year, but a genocide and a complete destruction of Gaza is something which is tectonic, maybe strong enough to bring a change. You said before, we cannot really anticipate it. Maybe it's already happening, we will only notice it later. So we cannot give up on that. I think this is, if we want to go into a just solution, it has to be, like you said before, it has to be just for these classes, and it has to be part of a socialist revolution. And I don't see a different possibility. What else should we fight for? I mean, what is the other option for us?
Who wants to answer the question about the solidarity during war? Or even whatever you want to answer.
Yeah, I have this question a lot also in the context of Germany, because when you compare, for example, the Palestinian movement in the UK, which is really historically linked to the feminist cause, to the students' struggles, to the even all the unions have a statement on Palestine, no? Even though they can be not following it and so on. But it's really linked to the queer struggle, to any struggle. And I think here in Germany, we might only slowly start to be able to build this, what maybe in the UK happened in the 80s. But what I think, I mean, we have to have self-critique as a movement, but I think also the alienation, I mean, comes also not only from the violence, from the state repression, but comes also from the lack of solidarity from the people here. Like we have until now, Amnesty wouldn't go public with a Palestinian group, political group. Until now, but we serve them with documentation of arrests. So now you have this demo, even though we had a demo with 30,000, actually the first demo, which was happening after the ban in November 23. But even now, this demo, it's organized by 2 individuals, no? And this makes white German civil society comfortable to join. So I think when we look at solidarity, first we shouldn't acknowledge what the movement has been doing, and specifically Palestinians going on the streets organizing for almost 2 years. But I think we are really on the very, very beginning. I had talks with organizations who now joined the demo, and they were still saying, internally we debate if it is a genocide or not. And then I realized, okay, we really have to start from zero. And I think for me, what I learned in this encounter is that building solidarity here means a lot of patience. And here we come to the constant of, I just got my father called me, and I'm not sure, because normally he doesn't call, so I'm always, in this condition where I don't have patience. I don't have time for people to debate if it's now, after 20 months, clear if it's a genocide or not. But I know we have to have it, no? So for me, it's also, I'm wondering, I would like to learn also from the comrades from the UK, how they did it in the 80s, because I think for me it's really a big question mark, because I feel now we have people standing up, in quotation mark, because it's kind of within the public framing now. I mean, you are not a revolutionarist when you now say we want humanitarian aid for Gaza, or we want the war to end, So I think we are still not in a stage where the broader public has a radical shift in thoughts. So I don't know. For me, the solution is patient.
I have a comment regarding regarding activism in urgency. I really find it a very critical term. I come from a tradition of a political party, so to me, I always looked critically at the concept of activism because it has this reactionary element to it. Something happens and then we need to get activated, and we need to always perform in urgency, which would limit our ability to strategize. Whoever that crossed the fences of that massive prison called Gaza on the 7th of October didn't think that our activism will be to end the genocide. There was no genocide before the 7th of October. We were activists for Palestine because the strategical aim is the liberation of Palestine, all of Palestine, and not only to stop the genocide. If we just stop the genocide, then we miss on a momentum to strategize around what is happening in Palestine now. Surely we should stop that. Ending the genocide shouldn't be a question, but beyond that, we should question beyond that. So to do that, we should get out of the urgency in our minds. I think one of my critiques to the movement in the West in particular is that maybe it has learned from how political activism is done in here, and it fell in the trap of calling itself activist network, therefore falling in the trap of being reactionary. They bombed the hospital, we go out in the streets. They do something, we go out. So I'm very critical of that term. Regarding the question of Israeli working class, to be honest, it's not only the Israeli working class. It's the French working class that is also voting extremely right-wing. The German working class. I read an article like 3 or 4 years ago in France, and it had a very interesting argument, saying that it's not the working class that betrayed leftism or socialists. It's not the working class that betrayed socialists. It's socialists who betrayed working class by slowly from the 70s onward and the 60s after 1968. They have adopted the post-structuralist approach that their audience has become upper middle class and not the working class anymore. They don't talk to working class. So I would blame Marxists for that. I wouldn't blame the working class for it. The Marxists have decided to live in an ivory tower and discuss things, and that's one of the other things where I also feel like the Palestinian movement, particularly in Germany, has also assimilated to. There is a genocide happening, and I see some parts of the Palestinian movement questioning whether it's okay for white people to wear a kufiya or not, which to me is extremely middle-class Palestinian narrative concerned with details of representation and forgetting the roots of the issue. And that's one of the things where I think as Marxists we need to question. How did we construct our argument in the past 4 or 5 decades that the one we are talking to in our mind are the elites, the intellectuals, and the students, and not anymore the working class. And I think the Israeli left has done the same.
Interesting. Thank you so much. I will give the mic to you. You surely also have something to say. And then I have to look at my timekeeper here. We round it up after that? Okay. So maybe if you can react to the questions, but then also I would ask every one of you to give us like a closing statement, closing argument, and maybe include like a very practical impulse. Like what should they take home and do tomorrow?
Okay. Yeah, okay. Actually, I'm a little bit sad that we talked so much that we didn't have more contributions. So when you have criticism, please come afterwards to me and say it directly to me, okay? And don't go around and then Abu Hajar said this and Dada said this, because this is very important actually, that when we want to create a space that we want to discuss about several, especially about these struggles, it is important to understand that criticism is a way of understanding and discussing with each other, okay? Not just solidarity doesn't mean to accept everything what a person said because the person has at this struggle the right identity, which is not the part of political issues or political struggle that I want to have. And not just this is not the discussion that I want to have when we talk about several struggles and how we can unify them. When it comes to Germany, I think I totally understand when Palestinians, when their family are dying right now, they don't have the energy after 20 months to discuss with, I don't know, Annika and Anton about, is it a genocide or not? Are Palestinian humans or I don't know what? But it's actually it should be the work of the comrades who aren't Palestinians and who are here in Germany, who can and should discuss then with these Anton and Annika, because we need them, okay? They are working in the companies who are producing the weapons. They are working in the state. They are working in the areas, in the schools as teachers who are maybe banning the kufiya just because they think it's a symbol of anti-Semitism. And we have to learn that we have to discuss with these people because they are 60% of the German population who are against sending weapons to Israel. But these 60%, not even half of them are on the streets with us. So we have to discuss, we have to think, what can we contribute to the Palestinian movement? That these 60% who were against weapon delivery are with us on the streets. How they can overcome racism, how they can overcome their thoughts that that the media and the parliament are actually putting on their minds. How can we discuss with them? And there is a very good, I am in an organization which is in Germany more German, right? They are not there are more white people inside of the group, and it was so interesting. After the 7th of October, no one questioned the right that the Palestinians can have the right to resistance with weapons. Yes, not just they throw a stone and we like that. No, they have the right to resist with weapons. But they didn't have a lot of knowledge what kind of news they could actually see and watch. Because they were like 15 years old, comrades, but they just learned that there are other news than German news. and they discovered what to watch, maybe what to not watch, and how to, you know, understand the news from several sources that they can use. And this is actually, it is maybe not easy for someone when, you know, your father is dying or your cousin died just, you know, some weeks ago, and then you start to discuss what kind of news people should watch or not. But this should be the role of us. The role of people who are not Palestinians, maybe who don't have the family, to discuss with these Germans. Because we should take this on us to discuss with the society we are working in. This doesn't mean if Palestinians have the muse and have the power to do it and to do this fight, then they're doing it all the time. Like their existence itself at some point is a fight in that question. And this is the one thing that I wanted to say. The other, I think, to the nuclear, how much nuclear weapons they have. This is a question, it's an important, maybe it helps you to discuss, I don't know, with liberals, but when we come to the ground, it doesn't matter how much you have, it doesn't give you any rights, more or less. There is no right to attack Iran because they have, I don't know, this kind of amount of nuclear weapons, and there is no right of Israel to do this attack just because they have these weapons and they can, you know, show their power and their balls, whatever they have. The impulse, the practical impulse that I can say is, regarding to the things that Abu Hajar said, we have to start to get organized here in Germany, so that we start not just reacting, because the German left is also, mostly the radical left is reacting to, you know, there's a fascist demonstration, they are reacting. There's, you know, fascist speech from Merz, they are reacting. But we have to understand when we have to get organized so that we have a movement, that we have a amount of people who not just can get mobilized when there is a reaction, but who can get mobilized for something, for our own demands. Not reacting to something, but we demand this and that. And for that, it is important to learn more about anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, Marxist, socialist, I don't know what, movement, to understand from this, so that we can then, with getting organized, also start to understand what should we do in this kind and that kind of movement. And Syria is a good example. Unfortunately, after the fall of Assad, a lot of leftist leaders and a lot of people who had the experience of the local coordination committees died or were in prison or are in exile. So there weren't a big movement on the ground who could make a contribution to, or no, not a contribution, but who could make a fight against the al-Shara regime right now. So this is why it is important. There can be any time, like tomorrow maybe it will be the start from demonstration, but maybe in 2 to 3 months, when the war is going on in the Middle East and Germany is sending weapons and is part of this war, then people maybe will get, you know, a slightly different position. And in that moment, it is necessary that they get in contact with people like us, who talk with them about capitalism, who talk with them about racism, about gender violence, etc., so that they can get in Widerspruch with this society. This is important. So when you ask yourself, what can I do, is get organized in a group who's fighting for Palestine, for liberation of Palestine, and start to think about these things and start to politicize the places you're every day in. The school, university, the work.
I really don't have at the moment a head of a close. I think I want to, what I practically take away from this discussion is that really, I mean, I agree we should get out of the reaction mode, but it's very, very hard to do so. And sadly, today we also had different discussion with someone else, and we came to the conclusion, okay, the genocide is part of our life. Like, even if it ends tomorrow, it will, you know, continue to affect us forever. And I do believe that we have to go out of this emergency mode, and yeah, I don't know. I take a lot of inspiration away, more than I can give at the moment, but I think how to build from the momentum which we have maybe and continue the organizing. I do think it's organized again as well. I really don't want to say that what we did 20 months was for nothing. I do believe it was for something, no? But maybe we are still at the very beginning and we still need to have a space for really put more political content into our work.
There were some things I was hoping we would mention, but they didn't come up, so I will just mention. No, I don't. First of all, I just wanted to say something about the concept of fear, which you hear all the time from activists around you and people who actually wants to speak but are afraid. I don't know why some people have more fear than others. Some people have more to lose objectively. But seriously, I think this is, we're now so far into this, I have to say also, I think the word genocide has become like a fetish of like anger. We have to express anger. We just say genocide. I mean, what is it even anymore? It's genocide for me. It's not enough to describe what's happening. It's a much bigger. You also said that's why we have to think above it to how it, what kind of. When this will get a solution, it will be a solution of something much bigger because so much was done. We cannot be afraid. You have to really start to speak with everybody about everything all the time. I think we cannot tell ourselves today, nobody with conscience can tell himself today, I cannot say X because I'm going to lose Y. It's too late for that. And I mean, what are you actually losing? You know, you're losing a society which sees a genocide and like a big part of it doesn't give a fuck. So what are we afraid of? That's the first thing I want to say. The other thing, I mean, this was a panel about resistance, and I wanted just to mention one elephant in the room, which for me had a huge influence on how the movement got, how the left got castrated is the word? Castrated? Can you say that?
You just said it.
Okay, I just said it. So I didn't live in the 60s, although it feels like it, but I kind of have a memory of that time that resistance, violent resistance, was something you can speak about. And I really want to say I have a big problem from first moment that this demonization of the whole Palestinian cause in this society, in the Israeli society anyway, everywhere, was being done through this horrible thing that Hamas did on the 7th of October. I think we lost a lot of power of argumentation and also a lot of abstract power of argumentation, because that moment in history was very important for the left, and the left decided to just act as if it's something we don't speak about. Usually when somebody is asked about Hamas with this idiotic question, are you condemning it or not? I'm obsessed with this question, not about if I condemn it or not, but I think we need to find an answer for it. I think the idea of our fight has to be only pacifistic is not viable. We are fighting against armies which are bombing children without even thinking about it. And even worse, there's a very deep connection between this unbelievable hypocrisy we live through in Germany every day about this being a democracy and freedom and all this use of the word freedom. You know, it's all about freedom all the time. Bibi Netanyahu said now in a video, he spoke to the Iranian people and told them this is their chance to go against the Ayatollahs and get back their freedom. As if he's doing them a fucking favor, you know, like we bombed now now all you have to go is get your freedom, and then you will be at the level of you came to the sublation of the Western person who has his great freedom or something. To be honest, as an Israeli, the thing that hurts me the most is that the hypocrisy about this concept of enlightenment and freedom is really is getting its most horrible manifestation the moment you have one side with airplanes and AI and all these amazing systems bombing the hell out of Gaza, killing thousands and thousands of children and women and men, and creating at the same time this illusion as if they're doing it ethically because it's going through some kind of judicial mechanism, and Hamas is hiding between people, and at the end we all know the result of it, but somehow the West, the psychological and philosophical thought of the West is succeeding in making it an act which is somehow according to being done according to Western values. The most important of them is freedom. And freedom is exactly what Israel is taking away from the Palestinians. And I want to offer an abstract thought about that, and then I will be finished. When somebody goes against an occupier which has this power of hypocrisy and performs an act of violence, in my opinion, what he actually does is to show the occupier for one moment, and I speak about the 7th of October now, and it's not a justification or anything, it would be silly to ask any person to justify the killing of another person. It's just how things are. We have to accept it. But the moment you go out and do that, you show your occupier, you show your oppressor, the core of the violence is being using against you, cleaned from all this hypocrisy. When you bomb from a plane and you kill 20 children, this is the core of it, is the most horrible imaginable violence. And when you take a freedom from a whole people, like Israel has been doing to the Palestinians for so long, and then you tell them also how they're supposed to do their fight, but in a sense of, no, bombing you and getting permission from my lawyer in Israel is okay, but doing the way Hamas did it is not okay. This is something we cannot accept. This is a fight for freedom. This is a fight against violence which is being done with unbelievable hypocrisy. And I think the left, if we are really left, we need to understand violence under specific terms are part of the struggle. I want to hope that if I would have been in a situation fighting for my freedom, and I would come to a point where freedom could be only achieved through violence, I don't want to hope, but I think actually this is the question who should be asked. We cannot just say it wasn't okay and that's it, and we also cannot say we don't tell them how to do it. We have to have an opinion about it. We have to bring it back into the discussion. We're getting neutralized on all levels of this, and and then Israel bombs Iran, and we're like, okay, now they do it again. What does Iran do? It's the same discussion. Now they complain that Iran bombed an hospital in Israel. But at the end, the statistic looks different, And we actually allowed the Palestinian fight for freedom. And I say it as an Israeli. I mean, I have to look at the mirror and say, what we're doing to them is 1,000 times worse because of this hypocrisy, because this violence is also packed in this Western enlightened values. This is the worst of the worst. They are fighting for freedom, and we shouldn't forget it. And don't let us, how do you say, einschüchtern? Don't be intimidated speaking about these things, because if you ignore them, you ignore the core of all of it. And maybe I'm saying now things which are making somebody here uncomfortable, but I don't see a way around it. We have to start to speak about also what Hamas did, and also what Hamas as a symbol of Palestinian agency. You took that away from them. You took away their agency on that day. This is an important thing. We would never speak like that about Jewish people doing mutiny in Warsaw Ghetto. Nobody would come with the idea to say what the way they did it wasn't. It was outside of our moral world.
What you called cognitive dissonance, false consciousness, I refer to it as the hegemony of the ruling class. The other suggestion, which I tried practicing a lot since I came to Germany until now, is to dismantle that hegemony, to challenge it in every day. They say, yes, I'm pro-Palestine, I'm with a two-state solution. You say, shut up, Karen, shut up, Anton. It's one-state solution. Challenge that hegemony every day. Because when I understood how hegemony works, I understood the difference between Syria and Germany. I understood why Germans love to wait at traffic light, even if it's midnight and there is no car, but they still wait. It's the hegemony of the state. It really worked. It convinced them that you need to follow rules, and laws are important. They protect you. In Syria, we say we don't trust government, even if it's about the weather forecast. If they say it's sunny tomorrow, we bring umbrellas. So we need to dismantle that hegemony because it's so strong in West Europe. The state plays a major role of everything you do. Imagine you live somewhere, you need to have an Anmeldung. This is very strange to my understanding. And we need, it's a long way to do it, but we have to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the great panel. I think you can do more, be more loud and cheer and really be loud for our panelists. Yes. Palestine. Palestine.